Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about the second Gary. So, who is the second Gary Gygax? So, Gary Gygax came and he just changed the entire world. He completely changed how human narrative would be for the rest of a humanity, right? And really completely antiquated the book. The book is extremely antiquated at this point, and like, what are the stories you're going to get from a book, right? Well, I will exempt sacred text here because that is a book, but it is, like the Holy Bible has the Holy Spirit to interpret it for you. But normal books, the author writes the book, and he is not thinking of one person. Books are written for a wide audience, and they're completely non-responsive, right? But Gary Gygax was like, okay, listen, you're going to have a dungeon master. She is going to set down, the framework of the narrative and begin the story. And then the player characters are going to be able to adjust what the dungeon master says with a single eyebrow raise. The dungeon master will be real-time responsive, literally, to how the experiencer is receiving the story. That can't be done in movies. That can't be done in books. What Gary Gygax accomplished on February 7th, 1974, completely changed human narrative forever. And the reality is, the most powerful, the most transformative stories happen with Dungeons and Dragons. So what I just said, in addition to that, the math rocks interrupt both the dungeon master and the players so that neither one of them can know the full scope or the direction of the story, right? Literally tactical infinity, okay? Huge, right? So Gary comes in and he sets a new path for intellectual evolution, emotional evolution, spiritual evolution. It changes all of humanity. Humanity will never be the same. Literally, the only day that changed humanity more than February 7th, 1974 was December 25th, the birth of Christ, right? It's the birth of Christ, and then February 7th, 1974. That's it. That's the history of humanity as far as transformative change, right? So who is the second Gary, right? It's a huge question, and I'll give you some, for a while I thought it was Kate Welch. I really thought Kate Welch was being specifically trained to be the first female lead of Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that would have really changed the world. Because the reality is, Dungeons and Dragons is it's been a sausage fest for a long time, right? And that would have really changed a lot. It really would have changed things dramatically, right? But that didn't happen, right? So then I thought it was Amanda Heyman. Now, Amanda Heyman, what she did was combat, exploration, interaction. Okay, all extremely important subjects. The combat gate was opened by Gary Gygax, right? And if you understand what was accomplished with the Strixhaven Dungeons and Dragons source book, she opened the interaction gate. And to be super clear, the exploration gate is still closed, right? So that was a big, huge change, right? Really massive. It was a massive, massive change, right? I think next, I think the next person was, Mike Mearls, right? Wait a second. What do you mean? What, Scott? Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, so Mike Mearls, why? Well, Mike Mearls literally, Dungeons and Dragons is only alive today because of Mike Mearls, in my humble opinion. So I believe that Gary Gygax almost ended Dungeons and Dragons in 1986. Cynthia Williams, chosen by Gary Gygax to save Dungeons and Dragons, swept in and did exactly that. Dungeons and Dragons would have died in 1987, probably. No, it would have died in 1986 without Cynthia Williams. So she rescued it. But then, 4th edition was so bad, it sundered the entire TTRPG industry, and Pathfinder was ready to eat Dungeons and Dragons lunch. And you might not even know the name Dungeons and Dragons now if if Mike Mearls had not saved all of Dungeons and Dragons by making Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition an absolute smash hit. Okay, So Mike Mearls very well may have been the second Gary, but he wasn't, right? So who is the second Gary? Well, sorry, apologies. This is only part one. I will continue this discussion in part two. Thank you very much. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion, nothing more or less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.